Hello, my name's Dr. James Gill, and I'm the Associate Clinical Professor at Warwick Medical School for Clinical Skills. Well, what inspired me to become an academic? Well, I don't really consider myself to be an academic. I'm a doctor that happens to teach people, and honestly, part of it is about time. So when I'm in the office, I will see 6 patients in an hour. So that takes me 1 hour to help 6 patients. Maybe if I'm really lucky and they help somebody else at home, maybe I've helped 12 patients. But here at medical school, I can potentially do a lecture to 200 students and hopefully make sure that they all grasp one crucial bit of medical information. And that means that then that information gets propagated out. So then I've helped each of those students help all of their patients. And that's why you go to medical school. It's why you become doctors, to try and help people. And this seems to be what I think is a reasonable way of me doing that. How did I get into academia? Like many things in my career, accidentally. So I was very lucky. I am a Warwick graduate. I came here to medical school and my boss, well, not my boss, my clinical supervisor when I was a first year medical student was Professor Vinod Patel. And he had me crying at his desk in the first year when I failed the first year. I spent too much time rowing. And that sort of started a relationship with him, and his big passion is clinical skills. And by chance, clinical skills is kind of the core medicine. It's how to hit people with stethoscopes. It's how to actually do medicine. And I finished my medical training and helped a couple of students with clinical skills as an F1 and F2, the first 2 years out of medical school. And I sort of carried on doing that in a way that they sort of forgot to ask me to leave. And then I ended up with like a temporary contract for several years. And again, it seemed that I sort of became part of the woodwork. And then I became a clinical lecturer because, well, why not? That was the next thing. And everything sort of spiraled from there. And then there was an opportunity to apply for a associate clinical professor role. And it's like, well, I'm here anyway, let's give it a crack. I love the clinical skills. I love the teaching. I know everybody says it, but I actually love Warwick because I am a Warwick graduate. I'm actually a critic of Warwick because I want here to be fantastic. I know what it was like as a student, and I know the things I struggled with as a student. So to take that extra step to now have a shockingly slightly managerial role, I mean, very slightly, I'm much more effective at teaching than I am at paperwork, but that opportunity I was absolutely going to grab with both hands. And yeah, I get to carry on doing what I love. I teach students how to examine people when there's a power cut. If your CT doesn't work, how to take a history from somebody and work out using your brain, not the computer, not a scanner, what could be wrong with that patient. And that really is the core of medicine, working out what the problem is so then you can fix it. Any teacher is going to tell you the same thing. I love the click, I've got it. I love talking to the students and helping them understand the concept, and then going and actually taking my hands and moving their hands, and then suddenly they feel the pulse in the place they'd not been able to feel it before, or they feel the movement of the chest and suddenly they see their thumbs move apart so they can see how much the chest should be moving. Just that click, that realization that they can actually do this. And sometimes you'll have a student who struggles because of the way that they take in information. There's so much information about people who are neurodivergent and things like that. And I think that I'm a very average doctor, but the thing that I can do, I think, is explain concepts to people easily. And I love a good metaphor. And sure, people laugh, but if that metaphor helps the person at the back who was really struggling to get it, you've won. I am more than happy to make a fool of myself if it means that somebody is able to make that connection and then move to the next point. I get students, week 2, year 1 of the medical school, clinical skills is the foundation that everything else builds on. we need this huge amount of knowledge at medical school, but if you don't know how to deploy it, then you're going to be an academic. Whereas we're training doctors, we're training carpenters of the body, we're training, biological mechanics. The people who come through Warwick need to be able to use their hands on a patient, and that's what we get to do here in clinical skills. We show them how to examine somebody properly, and every single year, because of the work we put in, one student will always come up and say, hey, I found this on one of my friends. And we will always send at least one student every year to see their GP because there's something that another student picks up in these rooms here. Well, as I'm sure it doesn't surprise anybody, how to use a stethoscope is pretty much an established fact now. So we're doing research into improving the feedback that we give to students using, like every Tom, Dick and Harry at the moment, AI. When I say that we're trying to do feedback, it's all very well and good saying to a student, you got it wrong, but you need to know what was wrong and how to make that right. And even if a student is doing really, really well, we need to be able to pinpoint where they were excelling so that they can still bring the good things up to excellent. We're having AI listen to the students as we're assessing them, and that's actually providing a transcript that is analysed in real time so that it gives us more granularity to the feedback, and that actually gives the students a really good structure, a scaffolding to build and improve upon. You need to know where you are in order to work out how you're going to get to your destination, and feedback is a crucial part on that journey. As simple as it sounds, it's colleagues, it's conferences, it's talking about what people are doing at the moment that inspires them, and then say, actually, yes, we could certainly use that. The clinical skills and medical education conferences are fantastic because we're always trying to move a solution forwards, but we're not on the medical side where someone's trying to find a cure. So you've kind of got that negativity towards it. From a medical education point, it's always trying to be positive and how can we make this good thing even better. So it's actually quite a positive environment to be keeping up to date with. Well, as the digital lead for clinical skills, I spend a lot of time thinking about how can I maximize the learning for the students in the sense that dead space, if you will. So I'm looking at trying to create resources, normally in the audio space at the moment, that can be used when somebody's running or when they're exercising, when they're cooking. A big component to that, though, has to be, you can't just give someone a lecture in their ears. It has to be bite-sized, it has to be engaging, and we're actually taking a lot of knowledge from media teams, and series as movies, how to keep somebody engaged. And we're looking, as I say, about maximizing the learning potential for students. I'm a big fan of stories and vignettes and cases as a way of getting things into people's minds if they really work to sort of hook information on. A little bit like a Christmas tree, you're planning on teaching about gastroenterology, but you want to keep on hanging as many baubles on as you can because each of them is this little sort of globe of interest that when they can't quite remember how to get into the Christmas tree, they can think, oh, hold on, I know what that one really interesting shiny ball, that story was. And it leads them back into the foliage, and then they can go through the tree and find the trunk and go to the next part of that gastroenterology journal. So that's the thing that I'm always trying to work out. How can I get more shiny balls onto their sort of educational tree? To be honest, all doctors will have, huge stories. I think that from my perspective, it's the score. I've got 2 saves, 1 birth, and no kills. And I think all doctors carry a score. Sometimes they don't talk about it too much, but sometimes it's just about being prepared to say, no, that's my patient. Nothing special. We just had a patient in the hospital one day and she wasn't doing very well, and she was my patient. And I said she was going home. And I probably shouldn't have done. I perhaps got a little bit too engaged with her, and we fought. And we pulled her back from the brink, and you'd go home, and then over the weekend, she would, unfortunately, as biology would happen, would intervene, and on Monday morning, you'd have to restart again. And got the nurses on board, and they were very clear by the end of that month, that was James's patient. You don't let her die. And she didn't. She walked out of the hospital. We did nothing special, but we just said that she wasn't going to go. And that's probably one of the personal highlights. Now, if we want to do, what are the adventures type highlights? I mean, as a GP, standing on a moraine opposite Everest Base Camp, watching an avalanche running towards you, is quite an impressive thing, and working out how, if it hits base camp, you deal with that. Thankfully, it didn't, and it was merely an academic exercise. But when you see that ice coming down the wall, that's a little bit different. That was, definitely one of those things that I do still think about now. I think that if you're perhaps going to really put me against the wall and say, what is the biggest standout thing, the thing that I will always remember from my career, it's filling in incorrect forms, and it's just going with the flow. Just give a chance. Don't put yourself in a box and say you can't do it. When I graduated, when I got my Royal College of GPs accreditation, I just felt, hold on, I am a hamster on a wheel. This was never going to change. And that really terrified me. So I changed it. And I thought, yeah, sure. I saw an advert to go and provide medical services on Bear Grylls, the island. And I didn't read the paperwork. And I thought I was going to be behind the camera on a boat, maybe on a yacht, maybe on a hammock, who knows. No, I ended up in front of camera. And I lost 14 kilos in 5 weeks. And I learnt that medicine is the same wherever you are. It's about caring for people. And that's the big thing. It's not necessarily about your ability to throw medications at people or set limbs. It's about treat the person in front of you. There's Hunter Adams has a great quote, and it's the thing that keeps me going in medicine. You treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a patient, you always win. And to be honest, I think that's what all doctors should have, some kind of mantra that they can always go back to. And that was mine. I'm a cheap copy. It's that simple. No, what I mean by that is I think about who always inspired me. And, I have a collection of role models, and depending on which situation I'm in, I will borrow their hat. If I'm struggling with a clinical skills session, then I will put my Vinod Patel hat on, and I will deploy clinical stories, give them cases like he would give me. If I'm giving a lecture, then I will think back to, Professor Peter Abrahams, who taught me. I mean, visually, the guy was a cross between Billy Connolly and Robin Williams in a Hawaiian shirt. His lectures, you came out very tired from them because the information was going into your head whether you wanted to or not. And part of that was his energy that he took, but again, peppered with interesting anecdotes. And those anecdotes were from his life as well. And I remember just thinking that the stories that he tell of, how he's been to the Pacific and how he's worked with various tribes and literal the physical adventures he's had, that, I will never be able to do anything like that. But then I think, why not? And because of listening to people like Vinod Patel and Peter Abrahams, I've been and worked in Samoa. I've been to Everest Base Camp. I've worked with the gladiators on TV, all because of what they have inspired in me. And I hope that the anecdotes that I can share to my students will make them say, actually, yes, that's possible. You can be just a GP and actually go on adventures. You can be a dusty lecturer and, inspire people's minds and just bring a little bit of chaos to the room. You don't have to wear tweed. I try to mimic the people that inspired me, and I hope that inspiration they gave me will flow through to the people I'm teaching. A few years ago, I ended up marooned on a beach, and I had no distractions. And I sat there for 5 weeks watching the sunset and sunrise. And I had to wrestle with my demons. And so I know what I would say to my younger self, because I did it. The thing is, don't be frightened of who you are. You are crazy. You will irritate people, but there are also people who will love you because you're a square peg in a round hole. There will be people who will like your anecdotes. They will be enthused by your stories. And there are people who will care for you for who you are. Be prepared to be you. And there will be people who will hate you. There will be people who cannot stand to be around you. But that's a problem for them, not for you. It's very easy to think that you are the star in everybody else's life, but you're not. You're the person who is the center of your life. And these other people, they might be, annoyed with you for one moment and then not the next. But that's because they've gone on to deal with whatever's going on in their life at the moment. Don't try and please everybody, because the person who's going to lose is you. Try to be happy with the person you see in the mirror. And that is a big, big challenge. And sometimes you have to deal with that demon and you have to fight it. And once you've come face to face with that demon and found a way of fighting him, which is often just saying, I acknowledge you, I see you, then you realize that actually that demon isn't as big or as frightening as you thought he was. Actually, he's quite small and he doesn't matter, because actually that's not who you are. It's who you're frightened that other people think you are. And because you know that's not you, you can ignore him and then he disappears. So that's the advice that I would give to my younger self. Be you, because you can't be anything else. And if you try, it won't work.